everybody. This is Sarna, and I've been getting a lot of questions about the HoS Stone boosts that I've been doing and providing on the Mankirk server Horde side. And a lot of you guys ask me, how do I do it? What is my route? What gear do I need? What talents? What glyphs? And we're going to be breaking it down today. I did a run this morning, and we're going to be breaking it down pole by pole and what my opinions and thoughts are on it, because I do get a lot of questions about it. We'll go over my talents at the very end, and you can do this with pre-raid bis gear. You can do it with some even dungeon gear on. It just determines how fast you can go, how much you can pull, how much extra stuff you can pull. Obviously, with better gear, you can pull more. You can do bigger pulls, and there are some pulls that I just skipped early on because I didn't have the gear for it. It was just taking too much time. But we'll get to that when we get to that. That said, I'm going to go ahead and play this from the recording I did this morning. As you can see, I got my buffs going, and I'm doing this first pull. I'm grabbing the first group. I'm hitting them with Shield to Silence, and I use my Racial in order to stop that. And the reason I take the golems separate is because the golems do a knockdown effect, the Unrelenting Constructs. They're honestly the only thing here that's absurdly dangerous for you. The casters can be a pain, but it's not nearly as problematic as these golems stunning you when you have a pack on you. So I keep the warriors there to keep my mana up higher with the extra blocks, dodges, and parries through Sanctuary, and I just kill the constructs. Early on, if you're worried about your damage output, as soon as you see them starting to cast the spell to self-destruct, you'll see it start to channel here in a moment. You can just switch targets. Now when I do take this pull, I don't really use any cooldowns or anything, but when the golems come in, you just count to 3 or 4 and pop your Divine Protection. This way, if you do get knocked down, you won't take nearly as much damage, and you can just keep progressing. Going into this next room where all the dwarves and giants are patrolling. Early on, when you don't have a lot of gear, you'll actually take these groups one at a time. Now with the patrols, they'll eventually find their way into you anyway. However, breaking it up to help mitigate the incoming damage all at once early on when you're starting out is actually very beneficial and can make a big difference. For cooldowns here, I use wings on this pull. I am a jewel crafter, so I also pop my Monarch Crab whenever it's available. It's an incredible trinket if you are a JC. If you're not a JC, you can still do these pulls. You'd just be using your Gossamer Egg instead. As you can see here, I'm bursting the Theurges down first. They're casters and nature damage. We don't really have a good way to mitigate nature damage. We don't have an aura for it. We don't have a totem for it or anything like that. However, something you can use is the flask that I'm using, and that is the Lesser Resistance flask that came out with the Northern recipes. It's actually not an Atlas loot, a friend of mine had pointed out, which is kind of interesting, really. But it's a great flask. It makes a big difference by getting more resists on the table for you. The giants, for as long as they take to kill, you can just pull them along. Normally I would grab that moving back, but for the sake of the video I just put myself in the corner. I know they'll patrol back. They were almost at the end of their patrol route to turn around anyway. So yeah, they're coming in right now, as you can see. And it's just the same thing again. You know, you just burst down the Theurgist, then the Elementalist. The elementals that are summoned by the Elementalist, they're not that big of a deal, honestly. Their casts can hurt if there's a lot of them, but they get cleaved down very quickly with Seal of Command and Hammer of Rages. Now we don't use any personal cooldowns here in this pull because we're going to use them in the following pulls sequentially. And the reason for that is this pull is not nearly as detrimental as the following pulls are. And I'm just waiting for that patrol to walk away. So I'm going to kill this warrior with cleave, and I'm going to pull the giant over to do the next pull. Now with this next pull, I'm letting that group walk away so I can go up the stairs to get this roving patrol, because I don't want to bring it into my next pull. I found it was a lot easier to just take this pull into this little nook here, and when that patrol that I skipped that's coming in now right here, when they come in, you might have to jump up and down because the AI gets a little weird about seeing you, and they won't want to run in right away, so you might have to just jump up and down while you're doing this, and it'll get their attention. It's actually what I had to do. The AI, see, they didn't see me until I started jumping. During this pull, you'll use Divine Protection again to mitigate the damage coming in. You'll probably have to heal yourself a little bit during after you're done with this pull. One thing I would say is that if you're having trouble with keeping your health up, something you can do that I had to do very early on was seal switching, where if my health would get too low, I would switch to Seal of Light to put my health back up to around 40% or so, and then I would switch back to Seal of Command. But as you get more comfortable with the pulls, you'll know yourself when it's, all right, I need to, I need to seal switch or I just don't. Prop Paladins just have so much in the way of defensive cooldowns and abilities that it's just incredible. It's a wonderful class to play. I'm really glad I'm playing a Paladin this expansion, like I did in Burning Crusade. So as you can see here, I am grabbing the Golem. I'm actually gonna wait to until I turn my camera again to pause it. So these red golems are safe to pull. If there is a gray golem in this hallway and you are not comfortable with the pulls or you're not comfortable with the damage coming in, do not go beyond this hallway. If there is 2 unrelenting golems here, you can grab one of them and be okay early on, along with the giant and the first golem if it is a raging golem, which are these red ones. The unrelenting golems are the ones that charge and stun, and their stun is a knockdown, and it is not affected by DR, but it is affected by the stoicism talent, which we'll cover later. As you can see here, I'm moving in to poke my head into Brand's room here. Sometimes you get all 4 as raging, you can grab them all and just come back down the hallway and grab the golem you skipped. I originally did this without engineering. I actually only picked up engineering a week ago. And it's a lot easier with engineering, but it's by no means required. So if you're not an engineer, don't worry about it. Now with this, I'm popping my cooldowns along with wings, throwing myself in the corner to deal with the giant's knockback, and I'm just going to cleave all these down. Now something some of you might have noticed is that I am also casting Hand of Salvation on myself, and when we go over the glyphs later at the end of the video, you'll see that I'm running the Glyph of Salvation, which turns Salvation into a 20% damage reduction cooldown when you use it on yourself. For a 2-minute cooldown, it's honestly a big help. It lasts quite a long time, and it's just great. It's just another layer of protection so you can keep going and keep pushing. If you are an engineer, you can deconstruct the constructs. You can get the Jeeves recipe from this. You can get the triggers to make your boxes of Serenite bombs. Or, you be like me and just get nothing but gray junk. Oh, there's one trigger. Okay, I got one at least. This pull, alright, we're going to pause this here. This pull is incredibly dangerous. Regardless of your level of gear, this pull is very troublesome. Early on, take this pole in 2 to 3 pulls, to where you'll just grab one, tuck yourself in the corner to my left here, kill it, grab the next, and so on until you get more comfortable with it and figure out where your personal limits are with your gear. This pull can kill you at any point, and it's because it's a lot of nature damage from all these casters. This next section here that I'm about to do on the way to the maiden's room down this hallway with the giant and the 2 lightning constructs, I originally didn't do this as part of my boosting run, and the reason being is that it just took too much time. After I got rocket boots, I decided to start doing it because I can just taunt that to pull, and then I just rocket boot back down the mining hallway. If you feel comfortable taking the 2 lightning constructs, you most certainly can. They do quite a bit of damage, so instead of chain pulling in this hallway, you'll end up taking this pull with the double shapers, and you'll kill them all here, and then move on, instead of just killing the shapers and dragging everything with you. These lightning constructs do a surprising amount of damage. As you can see, it takes quite a bit to chop these constructs down. And the rest of these pulls are relatively straightforward. You take the pull, you'll kill the shaper in that pull, and then you'll move on. And the reason you don't just wrap around this entire hallway to grab the rest of the loop here, the curve if you will, is that the shapers will constantly stop to cast that shrinking beam. And it's just annoying to deal with. It does a lot of shadow damage. And they'll just cast it over and over and over again. If they take damage, however, it disrupts the cast. Which is why you kill that shaper, you come in and you pull these 2 on top of your consecrate, and they can't really cast it at all. That makes the pulls very smooth, very straightforward, and you don't gotta worry about some annoying laser beam going through the literal mountain. This pull here that we're finishing up is a good place to use your divine protection again, just because it'll lower your downtime. On the next pull you're about to see me do, we're going to pop wings again because it'll be back up. And it's just a whole bunch of these little guys and the two controllers. For those of you that have more active boosties, sometimes some of the people I boost, they want to help fight stuff because, they're bored, they don't want to just stand at the door all day. This pull, you want them to stay away because the controllers will mind control them, and with all your splash damage and cleave, you are probably going to kill them. Now, I'm just going to throw rocket boots to get out of the dungeon quicker. Uh, it just lowers the downtime, really. All in all, this run took me about 13 minutes, all things considered, and that includes the pausing to look over my talents at the end of the dungeon. But if your gear isn't that great, like you're not in full raid gear or anything yet, that's fine. With the parts that you'll skip, you won't lose that much and still come in at the similar time. Now, going over the talents here, as you can see, we're taking a lot of the typical protection stuff here. And some people might be wondering, well, why aren't you taking Toughness 5 of 5? Why are you taking Divine Guardian? And the reason for this is that Divine Guardian not only increases the duration of your Sacred Shield that you're going to use throughout these pulls, it also increases the value of those shields. And for those that have been watching, maybe because I do a healing meter and damage meter down here, you'll be able to see that I do quite a bit of self healing throughout this run, and yes, a lot of it is through Judgment of the Light, the procs healing me for part of my maximum HP, but well, easily half of it consistently is coming from Sacred Shield. It does a phenomenal amount of damage mitigation, and it will help absorb some of those problematic nature damage attacks. Also, if you have a boostee in here with you, if you if you pop Divine Sacrifice, you will benefit from the damage reduction component buff that accompanies it with wow, English, with the improved talent. There we go. You do benefit from that, even if your party or raid member is on the opposite side of the world from you. It does not matter if they are somewhere in that zone. You can use Divine Sacrifice, and you will get that component of damage reduction, which you didn't really get to see me use here because I did this recording solo. Again, all of the typical pickups. We only go 3 of 5 Reckoning because honestly, it's enough to give it really high uptime. I didn't feel going from 3 to 4 or even 3 to 5 made a huge difference in its uptime, so I just lowered it and put the points elsewhere. In the Retribution tree, we pick up Parry, which is relatively straightforward. Improved Judgment, of course, we need that uptime to heal ourselves. Some people have preferred to take Conviction for the critical strike chance. I prefer Vindication for lowering everything's attack power. It reduces your damage intake, which especially early on can be huge when your gear is not as strong or as potent. But even then, it's just a great comfort pick for me for all the dungeons I like to solo, and It's just great, and it reduces downtime. It does more than you would think, lowering the attack bar by how much it does. Then for glyphs, I'm using Glyph of Hammer of the Righteous, Glyph of Seal of Command, and I'm using Glyph of Salvation, which I mentioned earlier in the video. Earlier on, instead of Glyph of Seal of Command, you should definitely run Glyph of Divine Plea for the extra damage reduction. I'm at a point now with my gear where I'm more comfortable grabbing more, pushing harder, doing faster, that I want the extra mana buffer from Glyph of Seal of Command because it gives me an easier time when I'm finishing off the golems and constructs that I pull, in addition to other things in the dungeon. Glyph of Hammer the Righteous adding the extra target is actually pretty great. It just feels good to have. I couldn't recommend it enough. And of course, Glyph of Salvation for the extra damage reduction cooldown. There's lots of nature damage in here that you can't really mitigate outside of cooldown usage in Sacred Shield. This does help. You will feel the difference, and I highly recommend it. If you like soloing other dungeons outside of Halls of Stone, such as Draktheron Keep, where it's very undead heavy, you can replace Glyph of Seal of Command with Glyph of Holy Wrath, or you could replace Hammer Righteous with Glyph of Holy Wrath with a reduced cooldown. But those are for those solos and those areas that are undead heavy, not Halls of Stone. That said, if you like to go bounce back and forth and you don't want to switch glyphs out, you can run a setup with Holy Wrath in it in your glyphs, and you'd be perfectly fine. It won't impact you that much, just quality of life. That said, I really hope that this recording and video helps all of you that have been DMing me, asking me questions about what does my gear need to be, my talents, my setups, how do I do these pulls. This is how to do it. I really hope this helps. I really appreciate any feedback from you guys out there. Tell me about what you guys are finding success with, what you guys are struggling with. I'd love to hear about it. I really would. I love soloing dungeons and content, and my mind's always blown by what the community comes up with or finds, whether it's Spacious's videos or Subtle's. It's just incredible, and I absolutely love it. It's one of my favorite parts about this game is trying to figure stuff like that out. That said, if you guys are on Mankirk Horde side, feel free to hit me up at any time. And if you're not, hey, come stop by the Babs Discord. There will be a link to it in the description below. And love to see you guys in chat and hang out. Hope you guys have a good time and good luck.